Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's alumni talk. I'm Lisa Maria Neudert, and I'm a current part-time doctoral student at Balliol College and at Oxford Internet Institute, and I will moderate today's call. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to today's alumni talk on what I hear has been a very icy cold winter day in Oxford. I'm joining from Berlin today, where it's equally icy cold. And I'm honored to introduce our speaker for today, Professor Philip Howard, Professor at Balliol College and Chair of the new International Panel on the Information Environment, and also my doctoral supervisor. Today we will delve into a topic that is increasingly critical in our digital age, AI and the global information environment. What will we talk about? The talk will explore the complex landscape of artificial intelligence, highlighting its potential benefits and risks, and the challenges that we face in regulating and understanding its impact on a global scale. Professor Howard is a leading authority on technology innovation and public policy. With 10 insightful books to his name and a record of scientific excellence, Professor Howard's contributions have been recognized internationally. But what truly sets today's talk apart is Professor Howard's commitment to a groundbreaking new initiative that he co-founded and now chairs, the International Panel on the Information Environment, IPIE. Launched at the recent Nobel Summit on Truth, Trust, and Hope, the idea for IPIE was born out of Professor Howard's extensive research on technology and democracy and his concern for the health of our digital information sphere. The IPIE's overarching objective is profound. It is to provide policymakers, industry leaders, and civil society with regular scientific assessments and the evidence they so need for informed decision-making. It achieves this by organizing, evaluating, and promoting research that addresses the threats to the world's information environment today. In an era where suspicions about technology companies' behavior are on the rise and the demand for transparency regarding data practices is mounting, the IPIE aims to raise public confidence in the development and application of new AI systems through good science. So, in the next 25 minutes that follow, Professor Howard will share his insights on global trends in AI diffusion and public attitudes towards AI. He will delve into the mission and vision of the International Panel on the Information Environment, highlighting the critical role that it plays in shaping our digital future. In the spirit of open dialogue and engagement, we invite you all to participate actively in today's session. Following Professor Howard's talk, we will have a Q&A session where you can pose your questions directly to him, which will be moderated by me. If you look at your screens now, you should see a button labeled Q&A where you can type in and submit questions at any time during the talk. If you see a question that you like and where you think, great, I have the same question, you will have the ability to upvote questions there. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Professor Philip Howard. Phil, over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa Maria, for that kind introduction. Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I know this is a truly global audience, and that's one of the things that's always exciting about participating in a Balliol College alumni talk. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. I have a presentation to offer, 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so, and I'll go over some of the big picture trends on AI and the global information environment. I will make some cheeky bets. So I have some bets to make for the year 2024, and will get everybody depressed about the prospects for democracy and trust. But then I'm going to rebuild our faith for the year by saying a little bit about how the IPIE will help build trust and strengthen our institutions. And then Lisa and Maria and I will have a conversation about some of the things that we're working on together, that we have sight of. And then we'll open it up to the broader conversation. I think this is sharing. Lisa Maria, does this look good?
This looks great. Yes.
Wonderful.
You see your screen.
Thank you. Well, let me say a little bit about the research that I've been doing as an individual faculty member here at Balliol. I'll say a little bit about the grand research challenges of trying to study the impact of AI on public life and on our political lives. I'll present some new evidence, some interesting new evidence about the global trends in public understanding of AI. And then I'll offer a little briefing on where we are with building this new institution, the International Panel on the Information Environment. Over several years now, the labs here at Oxford have been studying misinformation in the 2016 election and the Brexit conversation here in this country, in many elections around Europe, around the world. And over time, I've come to think of misinformation as the existential threat that prevents action on all the other existential threats that we might care about. War, famine, climate change. There's a whole host of public health, of course. There's a whole host of difficult, challenging policy problems that are even harder to solve if public understanding of the issues is degraded, if our political leaders don't fully understand the issues they're trying to regulate on. In that sense, the problem of misinformation is a kind of choke point for so many other issue areas that we might individually care about. Now, studying misinformation over time has become increasingly difficult, and I actually think we have less access now to data than we did back in 2016, when many of us were catching the problems in the first place. The research itself is challenging. Studying trolls, studying hate speech takes a mental toll on the students and the research teams that try to do this work. There have been a couple of diplomatic efforts with the big technology firms to try and get them to share data, to contribute to the libraries. One of the largest was called Social Science One, and it's collapsed. The research APIs, the things that allow us to pull data about the big trends, these things are also being degraded. They're being turned off. The feature set changes. It makes it very difficult to do the computational work we need to do to understand big trends. And on the regulatory side, there are some regulators who won't listen or they over-regulate. And I'm increasingly concerned about efforts that'll have pretty serious consequences for political speech because regulators don't fully understand the impact of the rules that they pass and enforce. And ultimately, they're the technology firms who barely comply with the rules, behave badly, flaunt the rules, refuse to participate in constructive conversations, either with civil society or academics. So there's a whole host of challenges both to public life and to research itself. Now, in terms of AI politics, I want to offer two cheeky bets for 2024. I think we found over the last few years that the industry that really leads on applying new information technologies to maneuver public opinion, the industry that really leads are pharmaceuticals and health. There's a couple of reasons for this. I can say more during the Q&A if we like. But the first bet I would make for 2024 is that if there are going to be big new tools for manipulating public opinion from artificial intelligence, it'll be primarily health and pharmaceuticals that do the really innovative work. Promoting some kinds of medicine for dealing with your migraines, getting ready for the next global pandemic, whatever issue that might be. The healthcare sector, the communications firms that work in health are often the most aggressive in their messaging and in playing with new technologies. So that's the first bet. In 2024, the pharmaceuticals will lead on the application of AI systems for manipulating public opinion. My second bet is that sometime during the year, Facebook or Meta will stop the circulation of professionally produced news on its platform and replace professional news outlets with some kind of AI news product. Now, we've already seen a little bit of a hint about what this might look like. I'm Canadian, and over the summer, the Canadian government had real trouble getting news about the massive forest fires out across social media to the communities who are endangered by the forest fires. And what had happened was that Facebook had withdrawn the professional news content from the platform in response to a regulatory move that the Canadian government had made. So the Canadian government had passed a new policy saying that some of the revenue from the social media firms had to go back to independent journalism. Facebook said, we'll remove news content, and that created the absence of professionally produced independent news. So my second cheeky bet is that sometime this year, for a major country, a major G7 country, Facebook will turn off the news supply for the entire country and replace it with some AI-generated news product that it invents for itself, some kind of meta AI news product. So 2 cheeky bets. We can meet again in a year and decide who was right, whether I would have won those bets. I think the consequence of all the innovation we've seen in AI and AI communications is that all of us need to be able to evaluate the reputational risks that come with having our data go into the large language models, or we'll need to understand what kinds of media content is coming at us, whether it's produced by AI systems or not. In some cases, this will be about corporate actors, right? So businesses need to understand their reputational risks when competitors or foreign governments or lone wolf information operations decide to attack the business using some machine learning system that lets them work at a significant scale. Then there's also the personal risks, right? Because ultimately it's our Gmail accounts, it's our content, our search that ends up in the training data that in some ways represents us and shapes our opportunities. I think depending on the country, so many elections happening this year, the political advertising will start to evolve in such a way that it takes advantage of the large language models that make it possible to learn from our credit card purchases and our social media posts and the other kinds of digital trace data we leave behind us as we move through the day in our modern societies. Now, over the long term, I think there's a number of very deep threats to our institutions and some things we should be worried about, thinking about. AI systems have the potential to generate large amounts of content, video, audio very quickly based on text and audio and video that gets customized and made to measure, made to order. In the next few years, we may need to think about what this might mean for the next health pandemic, the big round of elections that are coming this year. Some of our research at the lab has demonstrated the threat of profiteering. So much of the misinformation is about trying to sell baseball hats or get you to visit a particular website to purchase a t-shirt. That profiteering is a mechanism that we have difficulty dealing with, and the technology firms aren't always eager to tighten up on that profit trail. There are a couple of regulatory opportunities on the horizon. The European Commission, the Canadian government, the Australian government are all starting to look at ways of requiring access to data for researchers, of requiring the firms to meet their own standards for community norms. I think most of the major political actors, the political parties, these have been the organizations spending the big bucks on AI-generated political content. But increasingly, there'll be special issue campaigns on particular narrow bits of legislation or on some of the things we thought had been put to bed, like smoking. The relationship between smoking and cancer, there's been medical consensus about this for 70 years. But special issues, it's not every cigarette brand, may depend on your gender, have you read this article? These kinds of large, complex campaigns that get you to question things, even though the medical consensus is there. These special issue operations will increasingly, I think, use AI systems. There's going to be more and more advanced AI systems. So many of you may have had a chance to play with ChatGPT or some of the platforms that generate images. Those are going to get more sophisticated and more interesting. And of course, the bandwidth to the household will only increase. On average, across the UK, The average household has something like 10 megabytes down and 2 megabytes up. But the infrastructure firms are planning for 2030 for having 10 gigabytes down in speed and 10 gigabytes up. That is an enormous flood of bandwidth that will allow all sorts of experiences that we have difficulty imagining now. So whatever we do with our regulations actually needs to get ready for that next round of technologies, that high bandwidth environment. I think perhaps the deepest, most existential threat to our institutions is about evidence and the role of evidence in public life. Most of the information operations we've caught have an immediate agenda, getting you to question something that you've held to be true. But the long-term effect is to diminish trust in the courts, in the police, in our libraries, in the research community. And the long-term threat is also in pushing evidence out of public conversations, making everybody question every assumption. Sounds healthy, but there are also there's some assumptions based on evidence that we should accept and that we should shape policy with. Now, I'm going to present 3 chunks of evidence about algorithmic bias, manipulation, misinformation. 3 chunks of evidence about how these are perceived as global problems, global risks, that we can find solutions for. So I'm going to end with a message of hope, remember? Let me say something first about the kinds of problems. This is a perhaps familiar map of the kinds of information operations that we've seen over the last 5 years. This is a study period of 5 years from 2017 to 2022 on Facebook and Instagram. It's a basic heat map of the target audiences for information operations. Mexico, the United States, several countries across Eastern Europe are the targets, the domestic audience targets for information operations. Basically, if you're running an election, and this seems to be the most sensitive moment when information operations are at their highest, the political parties pay for them, and political actors outside the country pay for them as well. But one of the surprising things we've learned over time is that most of the world's information operations are not actually in English. They're operating in Arabic and Turkish and Spanish. And the only reason we know this is that the platforms themselves, for several years, have been releasing little data sets. Every time they catch an information operation themselves and pull it down, they do a press release with some statistics about how large the operation was, how many fake accounts they caught. We tend to spend most of our time as a research community working on English, UK voters, US voters during election time. But there's a whole host of other languages in which these information operations are active, manipulating public life. And we have very little sight of what they're like, what those operations, how successful those operations can be. A couple of years ago, 2 years ago, we did a global survey, 154,000 participants from 142 countries on the perceived risks of new technologies. Now, we asked a battery of questions. We asked people what they were afraid of in using new technologies. People could identify sexual harassment, fear of credit card fraud, fear of AI taking our jobs, or fear of being misled. And overwhelmingly, the number one fear, the fear most commonly reported across all the internet users, across all 142 countries, concerned disinformation. Disinformation is the single most important fear of internet and social media use. More than half of the internet using respondents were concerned about disinfo. Now, altogether, almost 3/4 of the internet using population were worried about a mixture of threats, including online disinfo, but also fraud and harassment. And there was very interesting regional variations in this. So across Southeast Asia, fear of disinformation wasn't particularly high. It was quite low, actually. Across Latin America, it was mostly concern about sexual harassment, particularly among women internet users. So there's important regional variation in how people approach technologies, what risks they perceive when they use those technologies. But there is one common red thread that runs through it. Most people, most of the time, are concerned about being misled by something they encounter online. Now, the trick for those of us working to find solutions, to do applied research that identifies solutions, is to take all the excellent social science, engineering, computer science, policy science, and distill it, make it accessible, make it comparable. So one of the major projects we did, and this is something that, in a sense, has helped seed the IPIE. This was a large effort to put together all the research on misinformation and how to respond to it, to see if we could identify the simple fixes, if there were any fixes that would help improve public understanding of key issues. We took a scoop of some 4,798 published articles over about a 10-year period. These were all articles in peer-reviewed journals about the causes and consequences of misinformation. Now, to start to boil all this research down through a process we call meta-analysis, we have to make a series of cuts about which articles will be in and which articles will be out of the sample. And I'll explain our process of doing the meta-analysis, but this is also about one of the grand challenges we have as researchers, because in some ways, the results are disappointing. Just under 5,000 peer-review articles published over a 10-year period. Of all of them, only 874 were empirical. That is, only 874 had evidence. The rest were about misinformation, but they were theory papers, they were definitional papers, very important, especially at the early phase of a new field. But only 874 played with evidence. Only 612 were actually accessible. Only 251 proposed solutions. So many had evidence, but were not about solutions to the problem. Only 43 articles tested solutions, and a tiny number, 18 of the articles, actually tested the solutions and reported the statistics we need to be able to make a comparison. Now, in a sense, this is about taking the study of Korean high school students with the study of stay-at-home moms from Canada and the survey from South Africa, different kinds of operations, different kinds of studies. Putting all of it together is the difficult work of meta-analysis. Now, over the course of doing all this research, studying all these articles, we found a dozen different ideas for how to improve the public the level of information available to the public. You can publish corrections on social media. You can label content. You can do extra things to verify that users are actually real users. You can change the advertising policy. There's a host of things you can do. It turns out that the one solution area that was tested most and the one solution area that may have had the biggest impact was about content labeling. That is, if you find a post on Twitter that is junk, if the platform has flagged it as potentially being junk, more people will understand, or they'll treat it critically. They'll do some of their own work to verify what's claimed. Now, of all the possible solutions, content labeling is one of the things you could do to improve the public understanding, but we have to craft a research question that will make sense across all these very different data sets. So this was the research question we crafted. Does content labeling have an effect on information perception? Where information perception meant accuracy, believability, will people find the content credible? Will they trust the sources? So this gives us one research question that we can apply across many different studies. Then we go back to the studies and try to measure the effect sizes. So a dozen different studies from different countries around the world, different sample frames, all with this same question about content labeling. What we found is that all of the studies revealed positive effects, and that we could measure an average positive effect of content labeling. So the lesson, after all this work, squeezing through, reading through all of the articles and summarizing the effects, is that if you do good content labeling on a social media platform, by and large, you can improve public understanding of the issues, their trust in the information, their sense of what's credible as sources. Not all the platforms do that labeling now, and of course, Twitter's stopped content labeling in systematic ways. So different platforms do different things, but we actually do know what a solution set looks like. The International Panel on the Information Environment sort of grew out of this initiative. Balliol has a very important role to play in the origin story for the IPIE. You can say a little bit more during the Q&A if you like. But at the moment, we have a mission statement, which is this. The International Panel on the Information Environment will provide independent scientific evaluating an independent scientific basis for evaluating global trends in algorithmic bias, manipulation, and misinfo, with the aim of improving public life and the rule of law. So our goal is to be organized in scientific panels that will tackle different topics: misinformation, teen mental health on social media. There's a host of issues that we know we can work on if we have the resources. And over the summer, we went live in May in 2023 at the Nobel Summit. Over the summer, we released 2 of our first reports just in time for UNGA, so went to New York to the UN General Assembly meetings to talk up the results. We have a pretty significant community and of researchers around the world and a very strong sense of direction. This is about applied research, trying to take what we know from many different kinds of studies, inspect, monitor, and verify what the technology platforms are doing. Our audience is an audience of policymakers, and our hope is to be able to shape the legislation that's coming forward, to avoid overregulation, but to get the rules right. To make sure that technology strengthens our institutions and doesn't undermine our political practices. Our goal is to bring more evidence in policymaking, especially around technology issues, and ultimately to raise that trust, to protect the trust in the institutions we have. For the most part, we'll be pegging to human rights issues, the Sustainable Development Goals. Those are the kinds of things where we find it easier to get scientific consensus on key issues. Let me give you a sense of timeline and a sense of mission, and then we can open it up to our conversation. I mentioned earlier, and Lisa Maria mentioned, that we went live at the Nobel Summit in Washington, D.C. In May, in spring, and over the last few months, we've been working on our legal domicile. We'll be based in Switzerland, in the canton of Zurich. Our funding comes from the Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Brothers, Sloan, Skoll, and Conrad Hilton. Right now, we're in the stage of chartering scientific panels. These will be groups of 11 to 15 people who are specialists in a particular area, who can help summarize the research, surface the good ideas, keep things succinct, write for a policymaking audience. That's a particular genre of writing we need to get good at. And in an important way, the hard work is ahead, because the number of technology moves so quickly. It's always ahead of the law, and trying to figure out how to get design principles, get rules that make sense, that don't squash innovation, is the big project here. So our website is ipie.info. You'd be very welcome to explore the content. We're up well over 250 researchers from around the world, from more than 55 countries, many disciplines. And we're eager to find more, of course. We need researchers to contribute to the reviewer pool. If any of you have colleagues you think would be interested in this, I'd love to meet them. We need strategic advice on what panels, what big questions, big public interest questions need to be answered in the next 12 months, 48 months. So we're always eager to have strategic advice. The main reason to do this, I think, is straightforward. I'm at a point in my career where I'm eager to try and build a better world. I'm sorry, Jeannie, your answer was correct, but Kevin shouted his incorrect answer over yours, so he gets the points. This is not a world I want to live in. It's not the game show I want to pass on to my kids as they become citizens. And while I may seem cynical about the role of technology in public life, I don't feel fatalistic. I don't feel that it's too late to change what's going on. And I do feel it's possible to restore that public sphere that I know would benefit us, certainly in democracies. So I've stopped the screen share, and I'm eager to have a conversation with you, Lisa Maria, hear what other people are thinking about, what other concerns they might have um, for for our conversation today. So I will open up the Q&A. Lisa Maria will join us shortly. There's a fabulous question about innovation and trust building. And I would say one of the things that's exciting, one of the things that's positive about the AI trends are that there are a number of governments around the world that have now supported AI for good movements. And as you all may remember, for those of you based here in the UK hosted a major AI summit in November. That was very much about trying to platform the constructive ways that machine learning can be used to improve government bureaucracies, to improve public life. I think there's some critics of that event in the sense that there was a lot of excitement and positive, upbeat messaging about AI for good, but it turns out the government guidance on AI systems won't be coming into place. The government's decided not to regulate, not to provide it, to keep it in the area of industry self-regulation for now. So we'll see where that goes. But a number of countries now do have AI for good movements. Lisa Maria, hi.
Hi, Phil. Thank you for starting us off with this fascinating talk. We now have about 25 minutes for a Q&A. I already see we have the first questions that are popping up through the Q&A function. As a reminder to our participants, there should be a button at the bottom panel of your Zoom app where you can submit questions. We have the first ones here. I will try to prioritize questions that get upvotes. So if you see a question that you like and you say you have the same question, then please give it an upvote, give it a thumbs up. And with that, I will start with the first question that was asked by Hapsa Pemberton. An interesting question here after this talk on the innovation of AI. Hapsa asked, what innovation is there around building trust in AI?
Right. Well, that's where I was going with my comments on the AI for good movement. So I think there are a number of guidelines from civil society groups on how to try to ensure that the training data that goes into large language models, for example, isn't deeply encumbered by racism or sexism that may exist in the data sets that we already have. So having high quality training data that doesn't that's been screened a little bit for our biases. Some people debate whether you can ever fully do that, but it's certainly worth trying. And innovation in AI is probably going to mean more accountability. So being able to explain where you got your training data from. That's going to be a key feature of trustworthy AI.
Absolutely. I think there's on trustworthy AI, I think there's an interesting question on regulation, which you just started getting into at the end of your talk. So Robin Bainham says regulation has always lagged behind technological developments. With the speed of advances in AI, what needs to change to get the right regulatory frameworks in place at the right-ish time to support appropriate use?
That's a fabulous question. Yeah, this is a fabulous nuanced question. I think one of the solutions is going to be to figure out what AI auditing looks like. Now, your instinct here is right that the technologies move so fast, and we don't want to have different AI auditing standards for every company. And we're sort of in a moment now where the large technology companies can commission their own audits to get their own bespoke audit review of the tools that they design and implement. And that's like grading your own homework, right? You shouldn't do that. There should be some global standards for what an AI audit looks like, and it should be possible to pass or fail a system if it's not been made with care. So, in the absence of, I don't think we would want strong prescriptive rules about what AI should and shouldn't do. But I do think we could have rules about how to evaluate them.
Fabulous, thank you. I think in that vein, a question from Paul Lee fits in very well. So you have just been speaking about audits that an increasing number of technology companies are doing, and that prompts one to wonder if there's such a wide recognition of risk in AI, why don't tech companies recognize the risk to their own businesses? Paul speaks about loss of trust and reputation, leading to less time spent on these platforms. Why do you think is there such a disconnect, or maybe there isn't one?
Also a good question, and I mean, Lisa, you know some of the you'd be able to offer a good answer to this one based on your own work. I think the in part the answer is that for many of these technology companies, it's a race to develop new products, right? So they're especially eager to get new stuff out, and since there is no regulator that needs to approve or pre-approve or examine. Sometimes things come to market before they've really been tested, before a full reasonable range of tests has occurred. There also aren't very many examples of a company that's been fully punished for having lousy technology. So you might say, shouldn't a tech company learn or worry about the risk to their own businesses? But if you can get to market first with something that's new and exciting and get a bigger tech company to buy you out, that's often the path. Sometimes that's the path to success innovators want.
That's true. That's very often the hope, especially of the smaller companies in the field. One big game changer that may make the risks very apparent to platforms and also actually make them face the repercussions is the Digital Services Act, the Digital Markets Act, and then also the EU's draft legislation in this area. Andrew, Helen asks how you would rate the potential impact of the current EU regulation on the AI ecosystem. Is there something to be hopeful about?
A good question. I think that yes, I think that we can be hopeful. I'm a mild fan of those sets of rules, but more important, I'm a fan of the rulemaking process there. So I do think that very early on, all three sets of rules will support researcher access to data, which is what will independently verify any of the things that we're worried about that we've been talking about today. I think there probably isn't another regulator around the world that's even close to doing something muscular in this area. And I think Europe has done helpfully separated high risk from low risk AI systems. And there's a bit of debate, you know this, Lisa Maria, there's a bit of debate about what's high risk and what's low risk. But large systems that affect entire societies, whether who can get a bank loan or not, or who will be eligible for employment benefits or not, those kinds of systems can be high risk, right? You want to get those systems right. Others are less, maybe low risk, and they're the reason they have a lighter set of regulations.
Mm-hmm. I think you were just offering an excellent segue into the next question, which is currently our most upvoted question. So Simon Ward is thinking about a very specific AI risk, and that is the data bias in current data sets. So he is concerned about current cultural norms being implicit in these data sets and is wondering if AI were introduced in the 1750s, would AI reinforce slavery? In the 1950s, the persecution of Turing. Do you think there's this sort of like current time connect to AI and data?
Yes, fabulous. I think the parallels are probably right there. The data that goes into training AI systems is also captures our biases, our foibles, and some of the social media platforms, the way large complex recommender systems work, they're applied to us, they capture our biases, and they're designed to take advantage of our cognitive biases. So our predilection for selective exposure, like we tend to like content that verifies something validates a decision we've made in the past. Elective affinity is another cognitive bias. We tend to like people who look like us, have deep voice, men, women, different features, demographics. There are different things that we look for in a political leader. That elective affinity is a cognitive bias. So this question is right on in the sense the data we leave behind, our data shadow, does capture our biases and reinforces things. I think AI is very good at finding patterns, unexpected patterns in the data that exists. Data that doesn't exist, AI can't play with. So to weave this back to an earlier question, one of the possible good ways to proceed would be to insist that high-risk AI systems work with fresh data where we know where the data came from, right? Where we know everybody gave informed consent, that there was some effort to make sure the data was representative. And the conceptual this is sometimes called data provenance. So before you release a large AI system on country, can you explain where all the training data came from? If a company can't explain where the training data came from, then yes, it might reinforce slavery values in 1750 or the persecution of Turing in the 1950s. If you were to insist on a fresh scoop of data, maybe it would capture different biases, almost certainly. But at least you might be more in a better position to correct for the forms of bias you wouldn't want implemented in your AI system.
We are about halfway through the Q&A, and I want to make sure that we talk about the positive things that we could do to harness AI for good,
Yes.
and also the role that IPIE may play in that. So we have an interesting question from Jonathan Hawksley. He asks, it seems impossible to make all available information trustworthy and time is against us. Should the first essential step be to educate everyone to distrust all information? And the second step should be to create bodies of knowledge that can be trusted because they demonstrate the required controls?
So I think I like the second part of the question, but I like the first part less. One of the things we found in doing that big meta-analysis of all the possible things you could do to combat misinformation, one of the policy options was digital literacy. So trying to improve at the high school level how people learn to source their political news or consume content. And we were surprised to find that there isn't strong consensus about how digital literacy or digital civics, sometimes called, there isn't strong consensus about the impact of those kinds of educational reforms. We think that the Danish and the Dutch both have very good digital literacy high school curricula, but whether that curricula translates to the UK or Costa Rica, we don't actually know yet. I think getting everybody to distrust everything won't be healthy. And in fact, even our political theorists tell us that a healthy public sphere is probably going to be made up of some people who know some of the things, but nobody who knows everything. A healthy polity is going to require that some people are not expert in some domains, and that we trust our institutions to aggregate knowledge in useful ways that results in good policy. So I don't think we could get everybody to fully distrust everything and then reset in that way. But I do agree that getting our policymakers perhaps to find a more expansive set of expertise, and I totally get the irony of an expert arguing for more expertise. But I do think there's a role for evidence in public life, and I think that some countries get into these vicious cycles where you choose elected leaders, you choose political leaders who don't believe in evidence in public life. They decide to go with their gut on key issues and ask all the questions, ask all the hard questions, but then they make policy that's not very good. People suffer, the economy suffers, and that creates a cycle of people demanding new politicians who also go with their gut rather than working with the expertise. So we don't want to get locked into that kind of cycle, if at all possible.
Mm-hmm. It's a sometimes slippery slope between distrust and critical thinking, one you want to encourage and one you don't want to encourage.
Well, I think it's possible. That's a great point, Lisa Maria. I think it's possible to be a critical thinker and still accept some sources of expertise, or to be a critical thinker and maybe have one liberal newspaper and one conservative newspaper, right? Have one of each and one middle of the road newspaper. It's also fine to, I think it's also generally healthy to have a couple of different media as well as a couple of different news sources. And one of the healthy things we think, one of the healthy information behaviors, is to read things before you share them with your friends and family. So we think a good amount of a big chunk of the misinformation cycles from social media users who don't actually read the junk they're passing along. They just blast it out to friends and family. So a good personal habit is to not share unless you've actually read and fully buy the content that you want to share.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We are in the last 10 minutes of our Q&A already, and I want to make sure I get to our most upvoted questions. A question related to the topics about distrust we were just talking about comes from Christopher Curry. He is asking, what are the steps IPIE is taking to prevent disinformers infiltrating its own systems, for example, as affiliates or reviewers, in order to sabotage its aims? I think a question related to the point that the stakes on AI are quite high. And as you covered in your talk, there's a lot of corporate and personal interests that is going in different directions.
Great question. So we were, and I can get at the Oxford, the Balliol origin story here. The chartering meeting occurred here at Balliol in the summer of in September 2022. About 35 people came together. We had a week coming up with strategy, trying to identify the problems that we could actually solve. And one of the things we landed on was that for the beginning, at the start of the IPIE, we would look for affiliates who were independent researchers based in universities. And all of us have wonderful colleagues who are doing research in government or doing research in industry or civil society or news organizations, right? A lot of news organizations have a data journalism team now. But we decided that it would be important for our launch for the first year to work with academics whose primary affiliation was in a university, just as a way of trying to maintain that credibility and that distance from the interests of industry or the interests of government. We want to be able to say some things about governments. This isn't just about Silicon Valley, right? It's also about some governments that are also behaving badly. And as a group of independent researchers, we need to be able to say something about them too. So the IPIE affiliate network is overwhelmingly academics, independent academics based in universities. We also have a disclosure process where people declare what their interests are. Most computer scientists these days have some kind of tie to industry. And then that discipline, that's normal. That's not unusual. It's different. You need to have ties to industry to get the data that you want and to build a big lab. In the social sciences, it's a little more rare. More social scientists, I'd say, have ties to government. So we're building an affiliate network that's independent. We have a disclosure system. And then the IPIE is made up of committees, of course. There's a methods committee and a membership committee and an ethics committee. Any scientific initiative that doesn't have an ethics committee would be strange, right? Or you'd be suspicious of it. But the ethics committee has an additional oversight role. When we're staffing up a panel, they go into the disclosure statements. They check out, they do a little bit of due diligence on who's being asked to do what for the organization. And those are the protections we've built in so far.
Great. On that note, could you also briefly talk about some of the panels that you are hoping to host and maybe already have planned for?
Yes, very happy to. So the first panel will launch in the next few weeks. It is about auditing standards. I was talking about earlier, a scientific panel on global standards for auditing AI systems. And our goal is to see if we can identify not some abstract norms or some aspirational goals, but some fairly specific standards for how to hold an AI system to an audit that doesn't change, right? Because we want to avoid a system of bespoke audits where every AI system gets a different audit. That'll be first. A second panel, 2 months later, will be a scientific panel on combating misinformation about climate change. And then we're deliberating. We may do a scientific panel on combating human trafficking over social media. That would launch 3 months out. 3 months after that, we've already figured out that if we do too many panels at once, we'll break the organization. So we're trying to stage things. Do one new scientific panel each quarter. And each one will run for 9 to 12 months. So this isn't an endless talk shop, right? They've got a fixed term period. They've got some specific questions, and we need answers because the technology will move on if we're not fast enough.
Nice. I think that's a good precise amount of time in order to be quick enough, but also have enough time to delve into topics. Looking at the time, we are in the last 5 minutes of our panel. I want to end with a question that I know I also share, which Anthony Shepard is asking. No, apologies, not the Anthony Shepard question. The question that I actually meant to ask has disappeared, I think. Oh no, here it is, from William Phillips. So William Phillips is asking, many people fear AI as an existential threat to human existence, not just to human democracy. Is this legitimate? Is this silly sci-fi thinking or something in between?
This is a great question. It can be a great way to polarize a bunch of academics really, really quickly. So I'll say, I am most interested in working on the real problems for people who are living now. And I don't mean to offer that as a glib answer to that question, but I think some of the existential threat questions are really 1,000 years out, and are not everybody may know about this line of thought, but it's much more about preparing for a world in which AI starts to combine with human brains in thinking. And maybe we should get ready for AI babies, right? Where we're giving birth to humans that have embedded AI systems. those are interesting thought experiments, but I think we have some pretty serious political and economic and cultural trends happening now. Teens and mental health, young girls and body image and Instagram. There's a bunch of things we know about for real people now. I'm not sure the IPI will help. IPIE will be able to help with that long-term existential risk stuff. I think we'll be more constructive on some of the more immediate public policy areas that affect real people now in the next 5-10 years.
Thank you. I think that was a good positive outlook to conclude today's talk. Keeping an eye on time, unfortunately, I think it is time to wrap up, even though I see we still have many questions in the chat. Thank you to Balliol for very generously hosting us today. I go out of this presentation with a better sense for the risks of AI that are coming at us and how fast they're coming at us. But I think I'm also going out of this talk with excitement for the many use cases that are coming our way. And I'm also quite content to know that there are initiatives such as IPIE that help create the evidence to make sure that we get more of the benefits and less of the risks. If you enjoyed today's talk, you can stay engaged with IPIE on their socials and on their website. Or if you enjoyed this format in general, then Balliol is hosting a bunch of these talks. The next one will take place on Tuesday, the 20th of February, again, 5 p.m., this time hosted by Stephen Freilich, Stupid Money and Innovation, a Rational Approach to Industrial Research. I want to conclude by giving a big thank you to our audience for actively participating and for asking many thought-provoking questions. A big thank you to our speaker, Professor Howard, for lending us his time and expertise today. And of course, also a big thank you to our host, Balliol, for hosting us during this call.